we're going to look at how exception works in Java. Okay, so so the objective for this chapter is um, to make you guys able to define what is exception, describe the use of keyword try, catch, and finally, what are those keyword in Java. And we gonna learn how to describe exception category. Okay, what are the category that are available in exception in Java? And we're gonna identify common exception that usually being used in Java. Okay, then I think write the code to handle your own exception. We're gonna do this in the lab session instead. Okay. So basically today we're gonna learn about the theory of the exception handling. Can you guys mute your mic, please? Okay, so there are three main type of error in Java. Okay, so Hazim, can you mute your mic, please? Okay, thank you. So there are three main type of error in Java. So the first one is the compile time error. Okay. Um, this is cause of because of the result of the syntax error. For example, you make a spelling mistake of the keyword, missing out quotes, missing out bracket, semicolon. Okay. For example, if you are typing if or if, if in capital instead of if in small capital, small letter, right? This will cause a compile time error. Java will throw out the compile time error. Okay. So that is the compile time error. Basically, it's regarding your syntax, right? Java syntax. So if you have mistake with your Java syntax, Java will throw out the compile time error. So runtime error. The second one is runtime error. What was it? Okay. So runtime error happen when a program does not contain any syntax error, but asks the computer to do something that computer is unable to reliably do, which cause the program to terminate while running. Okay, what are these? So, for example, if the user inputs data of string format when the computer is expecting an integer, right? So you declare a variable of string, but when you prompt a scanner, okay, the user enter an integer value instead. So Java will throw out the runtime error. There will be a runtime error, divide by zero. For example, basic mathematical, um, um, error. For example, if you want to try to divide a number by zero, for sure, Java will throw out the runtime error. Okay. Another example is when you assigning or retrieving value from array using an array index, which is the greater than the size of the array that you declare initially. For example, if you declare an array size of 5, but you try to access array data on, for example, on index of 7 or 8, right? So it is not going to be available, and and Java will throw out the runtime error. Okay. So the last one or third one is the logic error. Okay. This is basically we call it a bug or mistake in program source code that result in incorrect or unexpected behavior. Okay. For example, okay, when you write your program, you accidentally, using an incorrect operator on the variable to perform an operation. For example, using a divide operator to get a modulus instead of using the percentage. Okay. So others example is when you write a wrong formula for, for example, calculating a circle or calculating a square, which will result of, having um, wrong output. For example, if you want to try to calculate a circle, you put in all the number, but the formula in the program is not correct, it will return a wrong result. Okay, that what we call logic error. Okay, or we call it in development, or developer call it, or in software development industry, we call it a bug. Okay, in your program. Okay, let's see. So in Java, there are exception class. Okay, and there's a bunch of classes in the exception um, library. We call it library lah. Okay, so the throwable class is the root class in the hierarchy. Okay, so usually when you want to call an exception, you will call a throwable keyword, right? So error represent in a recoverable condition such as Java virtual machine running out of memory, memory leak, stack overflow, okay, errors, okay, or library incompatibility, infinite recursion. Okay, errors are usually beyond the control of the programmer and may not try to handle error. Okay, so later on you will see this is unhandled error, and we have handle error. Okay, error handling we call it. Okay, so exception. So exception can be caught and handled by the program. When an exception occur within a method, okay, it creates an object. Okay, this object is called an exception or the exception object. It contains information about exception such as the name, description of the exception, and states of the program when the exception is occur. Right? So remember, there are throwable class. Okay, when you throw an exception, it will check whether it will go to an error library, or should it call an exception library. Okay, in under exception library, there's a multiple, other classes or child classes within. So for example, you have runtime exception, printer exception, input output exception. For file, for example, file is not found. Okay, runtime exception. For example, null pointer exception. For example of, try to access uh, you know an existence of array ID, for example, or index. Like I said previously, when you declare an array of 5, but you try to access an array index of 7 or 8, okay, most probably you will throw a null pointer exception. And also it have a legal argument, arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception is most of the time when you do, running an arrow with mathematical calculation. For example, when you try to divide a number by 0, right? It will throw an arithmetic exception. Okay. So under a legal argument exception, there are a number format exception. For example, when you try to insert uh, a string in a number variable, right? Most probably it will throw the error from the number format exception. Okay, so this is the bigger picture of Java exception classes. Okay, you have the object of throwable, then it will check what type of error is it's supposed to be handled. Here, then we'll choose whether it's an exception or an error itself. Okay. Okay, exception throw are instances of the class shown in the diagram or their subclass. Okay, so notice that there are pink and white box in here. So for the pink one is unchecked exception, and the white one we call it as a check exception. Okay, right. let's see what are the check and uncheck exception. Okay, so let's see what are the categorization of exception. Java provide two broad category of exception. Okay, the first one is check exception. Okay, can be caught or can be handled. Okay, another one is unchecked exception or unhandled exception or left unhandled exception. Okay, so what is check exception? Check exception is basically compiler focus programmer to check and deal with them. Okay, but with unchecked exception, okay, it will reflect programming logic error that are not recoverable. Thus, you need to ways to handle it. Okay, so basically in Java, okay, for the check exception, it will throw a logic of, for example, you can see over here, the check is white one, okay? So input, output exception, it will, throw out for example, if your file is not exist, file is not open yet, it will throw them, for example, meaningful error, right? So, but for unchecked exception, okay, it's most of the time is happen within the hardware, right? The program will execute the program because of the exhaustion of for example, exhaustion of the memory, okay, stuck in a loop, okay. So all this kind of exception, you need to handle it. By mean of handle it, you need to um, check when you run a program, when you create your program, you need to um, define, okay. For example, in earlier I mentioned try catch block. Okay, so basically try catch block is the way that you can handle your error, right? Okay, so runtime error. Okay, let's see. Okay, runtime error exception is an exception is an event that occur during the execution of program, okay, and disrupt the normal flow of control. When a runtime error occur, okay, Java creates an exception object. When Java creates an exception object, it throws the exception for further processing. Okay, when you're stumble with runtime error, okay, basically how it works in Java, it will create an exception object of, you can see that the bunch of class in here, right? It will create one of the exception object in here, okay, and it will define which exception are the category is based on the error. It will define the category and will throw the appropriate error message, right? Okay, so example of code with runtime exception. This code is intended to demonstrate a runtime exception. Okay, so over here you have a class block, then you have your main method block. Okay, so you have integer of I equals to 0. Okay, and you have a string array of string, which is Java network that contain of string of Java network math. But in this loop, okay, notice that so this while loop is actually try to count a number of a tree, right? Number of three. So remember, array start from 0, right? So when it loop into through the so basically they will print out the subject array over here. So when it loop through the array, so for index of number 0, you will get Java. Index of number 1, you will get a network. Index number 3, you get a math string. But when it goes to index number 4, I mean, sorry, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0. So 0, you get Java. 1, you get network. 3, you get math. I'm sorry, 2, you get math. And 3, when it goes to 3, so I is less than 4 is 3, right? So when it is go to 3, there is no more value in the array, right? Okay. What happened is the Java will throw an exception or null pointer or error. So okay, so in this example, Java will throw out an array index out of bound exception. Okay, so the previous program give you this error message when the loop has executed 4 times, right? Because there's no value anymore in the subject. So what was it? Subject? Yeah, subject array, right? Because there are only 3 value in here. You can see when it run it 4 times, there's no more value or no more array length that the program can be, you know, go through, will throw an array index out of bound. So this is one of the example of exception. Okay, so let's see what are the common runtime exception that usually happen. Okay, the first one is arithmetic exception. Okay, the result of divide by 0, for example, right? Operation for integer. Over here, you can see integer I equals to 12 divided by 0. This will throw out an arithmetic exception. So what is null pointer exception? Okay, an attempt to access the data or method of an object using variable that is not referring to an object. For example, you have date D equals to null. Okay, when you try to print out um, D value, since you set it in a null, it will throw out the null pointer exception, or there's no value that you can print, right? So that's why the Java will throw out the null pointer exception. Okay, let's see what is negative array size exception. An attempt to create an array with negative dimension size. So for example, you try to create an array with a value or the size of array um, with the negative number. For example, you try to create an array of size of -2. That's not allowed in Java. It will straight away throw out the negative array size exception. Okay. Okay. Let's see what is array index out of bound. I think we already see the example previously. Okay. So basically, it's an attempt to access an element of array beyond the array size. Okay. So like seen previous example, you try to access array um, element of 4 while your array only have 3 value, right? So that's not going to work in Java, and it will throw out the array index out of bound. So let's see what is Java. Let's see Java exception handling. How can you handle your exception? Okay, the capability to handle runtime errors is referred to as exception handling. Okay, 2 ways to handle exception. The first one, you can simply do nothing and let the Java runtime system handle it. Okay, if you don't handle your exception, it will, so Java will handle the exception for you. But in most of the system, okay, for example, if you are writing a system, you might not want a user to see all the, Java exception handling stuff, throwing all, error code line and stuff. It's not going to be meaningful for your user. Instead, you can write additional code to handle the exception, right? When you write additional code to handle the exception, you can print out more meaningful um, error message, right? For example, you can say for a number divide by 0, you can see, or you can, write a program that said a number could not be divided by 0. This is an arithmetic um, um, error, right? Okay, so most of the time, handling the exception is preferable. Okay, all right. So let's see how you can um, handle exception. So this is example of the uh, exception handling with doing nothing, right? So for example, over here, you have class block in here. Then you have a main method in here. Okay, so you have a buffer reader class being initiated in here. as X. Okay. So you read a stream of input reader. Okay. Then you print out the line. Please enter an integer. Okay. You declare an integer of number equal to integer parse integer, okay, with the value of x dot read line. Okay. So an input of integer. Okay. So then you will display number is what are the numbers entered by a user. If an exception occur on this line, okay, integer number of the rest of the line in the method are skipped and the program will terminate abnormally. Okay, for example, invalid input by user. For example, this number variable only accept integer, but user key in double value or string value, the program will terminate it, right? Like most of you guys try to write a code before in Java without any exception handling. Java will throw all the read string stuff, error echo add line, blah blah blah. So it's not nice, right? And the program is being terminated while you actually with that kind of wrong input, you just need to ask the user to enter the input again instead of terminate the program. Okay, so you can do nothing with the exception. Java will handle it, but it will terminate the program without any further processing throughout your program. Okay, so this is the example over here. You can see all the red stuff over here, exception, blah, 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 blah. So when happen to a user that use the program, it will not be nice for them to see all this error stuff, right? So yeah, you can see over here, it's accept the integer number, but the user input double format instead or string format instead. So it will show out the um, exception string in red. Okay. Okay. Java handling exception with code. Okay. Java provide a mechanism for figuring out which exception was thrown and how to recover from it. Okay. Exception handling allows a program to catch exception and handle them. Okay. So basically you try your program. If there are any, so remember the try catch word, right? So when you within the try block, you have try block and catch block. Within the try block, okay, if anything happen, it will goes to the catch block. In your catch block, okay, in allow program to catch exception, okay, and handle. You can handle the error in the catch block. Later on, you see the example, and then continue program execution. Okay, there are three main ways of handling Java exception. The first one is try catch block. This is most commonly. Okay, then you will have finally block. If you want a further stuff to be handled when the error is occur. Okay, then you have the third one. This is mostly used in inline. Okay, with your method. Okay, you can use this throw and throws keyword. Okay, later on you see the example. So Java exception handling. Java exception handling is based on three operation. Okay. So first thing first, you declare an exception using throw. Okay. Then throwing an exception using throw. Okay. Remember the keyword throws and throw. Throws is the library. Throw is the method in the throws library. Okay. Then you will have catch an exception using try. And if something happen, it will go to the catch block. Okay. And then it go to the finally block if you declare any finally block. Okay. 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 The try statement allow you to define a block of code to be tested. As I mentioned before, right? Your code will be in a try block. Okay. For errors while it is being executed. The catch statement, okay, or the catch block allows you to define a block of code to be executed if there's any error occur in your try block. Okay, so basically in your try block over here, so you can see over here you have a try block. Your code, your main code or your method, all the stuff will be inside here, right? For example, all the calculation will be inside here. For some reason, a user put an input of 0 and try to divide by a certain number. So it will, when this kind of error happen, it will go to the cache block. Okay, and you will handle the exception. For example, if you can define in here, if the arithmetic operation happen in here, you will print out, or prompt the user to check their arithmetic calculation or input for arithmetic calculation, whether it is correct or not, right? So in the try catch block, you can have multiple catch, right? For example, in this statement, you have null pointer, right? For null pointer, you might want to print different error message. So when this exception detect that it is a null pointer exception, you will you can write the message or throw out the string of, for example, asking a user to enter a value because there's a null value in your competition. Okay, for example. Okay, and you can have multiple catch block. Okay. Okay, if no exception arise during the execution of try clause, okay, the catch clause are skipped. If there's no error in this try block, it will skip all the catch block in here and execute the program um, normally. Okay, if one of the statement inside try block throws an exception, Java skip the remaining statement in the try block and start the process of finding the code to handle exception. Okay, so when anything happen, it will stop the execution of the program in the try block, and it will go to the catch block and see whether which catch block are suitable for the error exception. Okay, the code that handle the exception is called the exception handler, right? Each catch clause is examined in turn to see whether the types of exception object is instead of the exception class in catch clause. So basically, when something happen in a try block, okay, it will go through the catch block one by one and see which error exception is being thrown in this try block. Okay, if one of it match, it will go to the that particular catch block. Okay, okay. So let's see the example of try catch with the same code previously, right? So remember we have a class block, we have our main method block. Okay, in here you have all your statement. Okay, you put your variable in here. Okay, you put your system print out and stuff, or value capture in your try catch block or your try block. Then you define a catch block of exception. Okay, catch exception. Okay, as a class as a ex. Okay, you can print out the incorrect output, and integer is required if there's anything happen. Okay, then it will um, continue the execution. Okay, handle with try catch block. If exception occur on this line, for example, in X over here, okay, okay, if you go in this line, okay, the rest of the line in the try clause are skipped. Okay, control is now transferred to the catch block instead. Okay, in Y over here. I'm sorry, in catch block in here. in the exception, after the exception is called and processed, okay, the control is transferred to the next statement after the try catch block. It will stop in here, but it will continue at the bottom if you have any other codes. Okay, for example, you have system out dot println execution continue. It will straight away go to the execution continue print out over here. Okay. Okay, example number 2. Okay, so you can see over here, you have class block, main method block. You have an integer of x initialized as 0. You have scanner. Okay, then you prompt a user to enter a number. Now, after that, you open your try block. Okay, and close it, open with the curly brace and close it with the curly brace. Then you will define a catch block. Okay. Okay. So in your try block, you will have your variable x to be assigned as scanner as integer, and then you print out what are the number that being supplied. Okay. But for example, when people or when user enter double or string value, for example, it will throw out an error. So it will throw out it will go to the cache block over here and will print out the uh, exception itself, exception e dot toString. Okay, when it print e dot toString, you can see over here the output will display an input mismatch exception. Or what you can do, okay, you can um, read the value e dot toString. If e dot toString equals to java.util.input mismatch exception, you can write a more meaningful um, print string, right? For example, you can write please enter a proper type of value for this system. This system only accept integer, for example. Okay. Okay. So over here, you'll see some of example with multiple catch block. Okay. You have one try block in here. When the error happen, it will go to, for example, this one, first one, it will check whether it is input mismatch or not, right? If it is input mismatch exception, it will go to this uh, catch block, okay, and will print out please enter numeric only, okay, or else other than that, it will go to the general exception over here, and you can also print out as an unknown error, okay, instead of having Java throwing all the red line string which can make a user confused. Okay, right. So uh, try with multiplication. So this is another example over here. Okay, so if you can see over here, there's a try block as per usual. Then you have a catch block in here. Then you have catch input mismatch. Okay, so over here, it will prompt you up. Okay, okay, exception in the first catch subclass will never be execute. So when you already um, define the exception library over here, or the exception class over here, you cannot define any sub or subclass or sub library of the exception class, right? So input mismatch is actually a subclass of exception. If you can see in the first diagram, where was the diagram? So, oh, see over here, you have exception is the main one, right? So input mismatch will be runtime error or any arithmetic exception over here is the subclass of the exception. So you cannot declare main class first and then use the second one. So notice over here, Java is not complaining because you use the subclass first before you use the exception class. But over here, Java is complaining because you use the main exception um, before you use the subclass. And you can see the exception, the error over here, my code error over here. It says that exception input mismatch has already been caught. Why? Because in exception in here, in exception class, it already contain input mismatch exception, right? The Java will detect a duplication of error exception. Okay, so it will throw an error. Okay. Okay, an exception object contain valuable information about the exception. Okay, you may use the following instance method in Java. Okay, java.lang throwable class to get information regarding exception. Okay, when you declare an exception, for example, like here, exception.e, alright, it's not dot, it's actually space, exception e, or, and this example already e. So exception e, and then you can, in here, you can print e dot something, right? For example, e dot get message, it will return the detailed message of the throwable object. Or you can put as e dot toString, it will return the concatenation of three strings. For example, the full name of exception class, a colon, and the get message itself. Or you can use e dot print stack trace. Okay, it will print the throwable object and its trace information on the console. Here's some of the example. System out dot print line. Okay, SOP is basically system dot out dot print line. Okay, in bracket you define e or ex in this case. Okay, dot to string, it will print all the value in the ex within the to string method in here. So toString will return the full name of the session, a colon, and the get message itself. Okay. Okay. Some more example. Okay. So you have this. This is a comparison with do nothing versus using a try catch. Okay. You can see over here in the program. We have class block, main method block, and integer number of array, integer of array. Okay, my number as 1 to 3. Okay, you have value of 1 to 3, so the array size is basically 3. Okay, and you try to print out my numbers with an array index of 10, which is not exist. Okay, not exist. The type of exception that you will see is if you left or if you do nothing with the error, it will throw out the all this bunch of string, right? Exception in treatment, Java lang array out index out of bound. Okay, at main.main and stuff. Okay, but over here down here you use the try catch block. So when you put this program or your statement in try block, when anything happen, okay, you define that if catch anything, exception.e will print out the nice words, right? For example, something went wrong. So you know that the user will know that, oh, it's error is happening, right? Instead of, using the jargon word of exception, thread, user might not understand. Okay, all this bunch, array exception string. Okay, so let's see what are the finally clause, right? So finally clause, occasionally, okay, you may want some code to be executed regardless exception occur or caught, right? So for example, you write a program that you want that program still run when you bump into error, you still want the program to be executed. Okay. In Java, the finally block is always executed no matter whether there's an exception or not. Okay. So when you have this finally block and you print something in here, whether there's an error or not, it will always print out the statement in here or the bunch code of in here. Okay. Okay. The finally block is optional, and for each try block, there can be only one finally block. So every try catch block or try catch statement that you create, even though you have a multiple catch statement, okay, finally block only will be allowed to declare once. Okay. Remember, if an exception occur, the finally block is executed after the try catch block. Otherwise, it is executed after try block. Okay. So if there's any error happen, for sure, you will go to try block, and then error is happening, it will go to catch block, then we'll go to finally block. But if there's no error happening, okay, it will execute the statement in try block, and it will skip the catch block since there's no error, and it will dump straight away into the finally block. Okay. Okay, this is the example. Okay, you can see in here you have the program. Okay, variable declaration. Then you have this try block, and then you have this finally block. Right? You run the code over here, blah blah blah, print out, and you can see out here. Okay, it will ask the user to enter a number 12, 3. Then it will print out the number. You supplied 12 and 3. But notice that in finally block, it also prints the string, which is that's all, right? Okay, so let's see another one with catch block. Okay, so you have all the basic manipulation up here. Then you have the try block as previously. Then you have catch block if there's any input mismatch. And then you will have arithmetic exception. If there's any arithmetic exception, then you have the general exception, okay, which you will print unknown error. Then you have a finally block, okay. It will be execute at least one regardless exception occur or is caught, okay. Okay, so example over here, you can see enter number, which is 12 in double, okay. You can see that the exception is being thrown. Okay, please enter numeric only. You can see the final block is printed. Okay, second one, both are in integer. So the program will print out, you supply the both number. Also without any error, right? For the second one is there's no error happening. The finally block is still executed. And the last one is uh, enter number of 12 and 0, which is try to divide. You will throw out the custom arithmetic error message, which is not possible. And still, that's all string is being posted, right? So basically, please remember, if you have finally block, it will always being executed. No matter what, no matter there's an exception or not, okay, the final block will always be executed. Okay. Okay. Let's see what is true. Okay, the Java throw keyword is used to explicitly throw a single exception. Okay. When we throw an exception, the flow of the program move from the try block to the catch block. Okay. Let's see in here. Example. So this is what I mean. Throw is pretty much like inline of exception. Okay, throw, you define throw, new arithmetic exception, access deny, you must be at least 18 years old if the age is less than 18. Or else you will print access granted, right? So public static void, and so you try to call this method and put an age of 15, it will throw out um, the default message of the error, and it will also print your custom words, right? It says denied, you must be at least 18 years old. Okay, so this is how throw um, works, or throw looks like when you use it. Okay, so this is kind of the exception error message that will throw will, show. Okay, right. Similarly with throw, keyword throws, okay, is used to declare the type of exception that might occur within the method. It is used in the method declaration. So for throws, it will use in method declaration. For example, over here you have the main string, but you know you want to use a exception in here. Okay, you will need to use the throws keyword with all available, which library or which class that you want to use. Okay, for example, over here, arithmetic exception, input mismatch exception, and exception itself. Okay, so but the way it will, show the error is pretty much like at bottom over here. It's pretty much the default um, Java error. Okay. Okay. In summary, so look, so see the difference, right? So try catch method or try catch style of exception. It looks like this, right? We have try block, and then we have catch block, and we have finally block optionally, right? But in throws, it will happen in, you need to declare in the method header, okay? Then you use the throw in the statement itself, okay? So it's quite different between these two, okay? Okay, you will also be able to create your custom exception, okay? In Java, an exception can be created using custom user-defined exception. Okay, custom exception derived from the Java exception library class. Okay, Java custom exception are used to customize the exception according to user need. Okay, for example, over here, okay, uh, notice over here you have a throws, okay, student not found exception, which is not available in Java library. But so you can see this is the one of the example of the exception that being created for custom usage. All right, it is basically a custom exception. Okay. Here over here you have the class of student found not found exception, which is extend the exception itself. Okay, how do you do it? First thing first, you need to create a new class. Name should be with exceptions such as class name exception. So best practice for the exception class that you want to create, it must end with exception. For example, car, uh, for example, let's say like um, calculation, uh, invalid calculation exception. Okay, that kind of name you need to use. Okay, the best practice, you need to use exception at the end of the class name. Okay. Okay, this is convention to differentiate an exception class from regular one, right? Make the class extend one of the exception class, which are subtype of Java library of exception class. Generally, a custom exception class always extend directly from exception class. Okay, so you need to extend from the exception class for you to be able to put your class in one of the exception library. Okay, so next you need to create a constructor with string parameter. okay, which is detailed message of the exception. In the constructor, simply call the super constructor and pass the message. Okay, so for example over here, okay, remember that we learned about polymorphism, right? So since you extend an exception class, okay, what you can do is create a constructor which will accept a string of message, and it will inherit the all the parent attribute, which is the exception attribute. Use the super and fit the message into the parent attribute in here. Okay, using super keyword, right? Okay, so let's see how you can use this class when you create. Okay, you have a student class over here, student test, then main method. Okay, so you initialize the object of student manager, then you use a try block to check whether the student is manager or not, whether the user exists or not. And in catch block, you can call the student not found exception and declare it as a variable of ex. Okay, then you can system print error dot print. Okay, and pass the ex object in here. Okay, and it will show the error. Okay, so this is another example. Okay, so you have a class of error control 8. Okay, you have the main method in here. Okay, um, so basically in here, yeah. So over here you can see it is using in here you have error control 4 extend exception. Okay, you can use it in here. Okay, um, and use it as a throw new error occur, or you can use it as in other catch block right here, right? Um, yeah, it will print out for example, in here it will print out two catch block, or please enter number only. So for example over here, -5 is pretty much an arithmetic error. Okay, it will show the two dot catch block. Okay, instead. Okay, right. Let's see. Exercise, we're gonna do this in lab. Right. So that's it for today. Any questions so far? If you guys have any question, or if you don't want to ask a question here, you can ask your question in lab session. I think it's easier for you guys, right? So for those who don't get the attendance, please get the attendance. And I think that's it for today. Yeah, you can, if you already take your attendance, you can leave this class. Thank you very much, guys, for your time. See you next week in your lab session. Okay, bye-bye. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, sir.
Saya nak tanya,
Ah,
midterm punya tarikh dah ada ke?
not yet. So midterm examination, not yet. I need to discuss with the course leader first and let you know when is the midterm will be commenced. I'll get back to you later lah. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Any other question, guys? If you don't have question, please leave this class and don't forget to take your attendance.
Sir,
Yeah.
untuk exception ni, function dia untuk scout for error ke? Ke memang dia expected lah?
Scout.
Macam predict.
I mean, bukan predict. Actually, it's not dia bukan predict. Okay. Sebab kau Bukan predict. Sebab kita run program,
Okay.
okay, kita tak tahu user akan masukkan input apa. Kan? Betul tak? So
Betul.
kau run program kau accept integer. Tapi kita tak tahu user ni kadang-kadang dia pergi masuk string sebab keyboard boleh masuk macam-macam benda.
Betul, Sir.
That's why kita ada exception ni. So bila dia masukkan benda yang salah,
Dia still
okay,
run enggak?
so kalau kita handle exception tu, program tu still boleh run. Kan? Tapi kalau tak handle, Java akan handle. Tapi macam tadi saya cakap, Java handle tapi program tu dia akan potong terus. Exit terus program tu. Kan? Kadang-kadang kita kalau user salah masuk input, kita tak nak program tu potong
Tinggal.
terus.
Ah.
Kita nak dia masukkan input yang betul. Betul tak?
Betul.
So itu yang kita pakai try catch block. Okay, try. Kalau ada error, dia pergi kat catch block. Kau throw out the message. For example, sila masukkan input value integer saja. Kan? Lepas tu, sebab tu ada finally block pula. Sebab bila dia dah kena exception tu, kita nak finally block tu, for example, kau nak print balik. Okay, sila masukkan input yang baru. Kan? So bila dia masuk yang baru, dah tak ada error, dia akan continue program tu. Kau faham tak?
Faham? Ya, still
Kan?
nak habiskan program tu lah.
Still kita boleh run lagi program walaupun user buat salah kan bila masuk data. Macam itulah. Nanti kalau kau dah kerja ni kau akan faham lah exception, validation. Benda ni kita nak control program kita sebab kita tak tahu kat luar sana orang pakai program kita macam mana. Kan? Tak semestinya semua orang tahu. Kan? So bila ada exception ni, dia jadi cerdik sikit lah program kau. Tak adalah kalau orang salah tu dia shutdown. Kan? Dia akan cakap kat user, okay, benda-benda ni salah. Buat benda yang betul. Macam tu. Itulah exception. Okay?
Okay. Okay, boleh Sir. Okay, thank you Sir.
Okay. Alright. Any other question yang lain ni nak apa? Nak perhatian ke yang lain ni? Sila keluar. Kalau tak ada question, kita keluar. Tak pun kau palau
Thank
aku.
you,
macam tu.
sir.
Okay. Bye.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum. Nishad, Ikwan, Adib. Fika. Azim.